slogan.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl Ericka from the Classy Climb blog. I brought in a lovely lady today who I see at many events. She be making the rounds. She's famous, and we're gonna borrow some of her time today. But you guys know how we do housekeeping. Drop your city and state in the chat, and if you're from New York, today is your lucky day. We got a New Yorker. Ma'am, introduce yourself to the audience today.
Hi, I am Sabine Franco. I help create businesses, protect properties, and plan legacies so you all could be safe as you pursue your purpose. I am an attorney. I work out of New York City. I've been around the way for about 8 years, and just looking to allow you guys to pick my brain.
So I love you say Franco. I'll be like, she's Italian, everybody. I'm just coming through. New York's everybody's Italian from New York, right?
That's so funny. That's actually my married name, and my husband is Puerto Rican, so that's a plot twist.
Yep. It's like, got you. Psych.
Yes, but you knew.
So, I was going to start this story off with telling you about when I worked for this lady who, I guess she had got like a trademark or a patent. It was like for 12 years instead of 100 years. Okay. And so we had worked with this company selling military grade supplies. And when the 12 years ran out, it was like everybody can make her stuff.
Yeah.
And so to this day, I was so confused. Like, what's the difference in a trademark and what's the difference in a patent? And like, how can people kind of navigate those waters?
Sure. So a patent it's a very specific area of the law, and it protects the invention of something. Mm-hmm. So if it's like a new way of doing something or a new utility of, use of something, like you could be making something better, but in a completely different way, that is something that typically is patentable, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And that is different from trademark. So when let me clarify, when you have a patent, it's only up to 20 years that you can have exclusivity in that creation, right? Mm-hmm. Because the idea behind that is that they want people to create and invent. So they give you that sort of head start. Mm-hmm. But they want it to be, to advance society, to advance the way we live and things that we do. So that's why they don't allow you to, patent, inventions so that no one else could get into that market, because it will hold us back as a people, right?
For sure.
Yeah. But a trademark is different. A trademark basically is you protecting your brand, the way that the consumer sort of sees you and interacts with either your service or your product. That's what you're protecting when you have a trademark. And when you have a trademark, that can last really potentially forever, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing that you have to do when you have a trademark is that once you actually have it registered, after the first 5 years, you're going to let them know, okay, I'm still using this. This is how I'm using it. Here's the proof. And then the 10-year mark, same thing. And then every 10 years after that. As long as you do that, a trademark could last forever.
So what are some examples of trademarks?
Okay, so some examples of trademarks is like Nike swoosh, or their name, or their slogan, just do it. Or an interesting one is Christian Louboutin. They were actually able to trademark the red bottom on their shoes. Yeah, that was an interesting one because typically you don't see that type of thing. Right. But another color one is a Tiffanie blue. They actually were able to trademark that. But a whole host of things like McDonald's, that's a trademark. That their golden arcs are a trademark. Coca-Cola, or even the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle, you can also protect that when you have some distinction. Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a lot of things. Like if something triggers you that this is that brand, most likely, or that brand should have a trademark covering it,
I was thinking of Coming to America in the McDowell's.
Yeah,
the whole movie, they're like, what are you talking about? We don't know that other place. And I was like, they got away with that. That's so interesting.
They sure did. It's funny. There's a place out here by where I live called Burger City. And if you go there, everything tastes exactly like McDonald's. So it always reminds me of McDonald's.
They're stealing. What are some of the most difficult things? Because you also deal with business creation in New York. Now, every time I'm on the channel, I'm going to say it. I'll be like, y'all just go and get your LLC, man. Just, Ericka, you don't understand. New York is complex. It's expensive. Yeah, hush. So I want to, for the record, understand what's the LLC or the business conundrum that is New York.
So, I mean, it's a little bit, I guess New York has an added fee portion in addition to you forming your business. Then you have to publish your business. in a newspaper. Now, this is a super old, law that really should be removed at this point because nobody's looking at newspapers as they were. But it's just a requirement that once you form, if it's like an LLC, you have to publish it in a newspaper so that people could be on notice, although who's being notified?
Just the public, random people, strangers.
Random people. So that's kind of the additional expense. But in terms of thinking about the cost of forming a business, when you think about what you're actually doing, what you're actually getting into, you're creating an income stream.
Yeah.
So essentially it ends up paying for itself, right? It ends up paying for itself once you create it and you're running it in the proper way. You're saving on taxes and all the good stuff that all LLCs or business entities do for you. So if you look at it that way, it's not really like an added expense. Right. And then I know California is particularly expensive because of the fact that they have like this $80 per owner type of thing that's annual. Yeah. That's a bit dramatic. We don't have that in New York, but I guess maybe just because the cost of obtaining things in New York is more expensive than anywhere else, that could be.
I was laughing because every movie makes it seem like, oh man, go down to New Jersey and get your stuff started. I'm like, what is in New Jersey? One movie makes it seem like there's trash cans down there. Another movie makes it seem like they're doing illegal gambling down there. I'm like, what is going on? So what is kind of the difference between an LLC, a C Corp, or a corporation? People get in these, weeds with this stuff, but I just want to understand more clearly what the difference is.
Okay. So, and I'll say an LLC and a C Corp gives you similar protections, right? Both of them allow you what's called liability protection. And that just means that it creates a separation between yourself and the business entity. So it protects you from the business. So like if the business has any lawsuits or claims or any sort of, issues, liens, that won't affect your personal assets. So you create that separation. And then vice versa. If I always use like the car accident example, you get into a car accident, somebody dies or gets really hurt, your insurance doesn't cover all of it. Now they're coming after your personal assets. So your business is separate from that. So it would not, affect your business as well. So that's
Ericka Williams, no money. But LLC Classic Clown, all the money.
All the money, right. So that's one thing that's good about these entities is that, protection. The second thing is that they do give you, you're paying a lower tax rate than you are as an individual. As an individual, you're paying the highest possible tax rate that there is for the amount of money that you're making. But if you're in one of these business entities, you are getting taxed lower. So now the distinction between the two of them, although they both give you a liability protection with an LLC, you have a little bit more freedom in terms of running it and record keeping. You don't have to keep records of everything that you're doing and decisions that you're making with the LLCs. Whereas with a corporation, you're supposed to. It's it's really
very detailed, like the minutes.
Exactly, the minutes. However, I would say that it is good practice to keep minutes anyway. So if you have an LLC, you should do it anyway, but you won't be looked at as you're running the business improper. Correct. And then corporations have this other thing where you get taxed twice. So you get taxed on, they call it double taxation. You get taxed on the corporate money that comes into the business and then the income tax on the individual. Whereas LLCs, it gets passed through to the individual. So no company tax, just the individual. But they have their perks, like if you're doing like a startup, you definitely want to be a corporation because you want to be positioned to receive investor funds. It's more attractive for investors. You can issue shares, and things like that. So it kind of really just depends on what you're doing, which way you would want to go.
So how often do people come to your office and be like, I need to get this corporation set up?
All the time. Like every day I'm having phone calls about that. And people are just like, what do I choose? I don't know how to choose it, and what type of thing to do. And the easiest way, it's not foolproof, but the easiest way I could tell people to sort of figure it out is if you are doing a service-based business, like you're exchanging time for money, you're providing a service, you should most likely you're going to fall into the corporation bracket. And there's another feature with the corporation that's called the S Corp on my website.
I'm just showing it. So they know. Go ahead.
So there's another feature with the corporation that's called an S Corp. I mean, it's actually really just the way that you're taxed. So if you wanted to do a corporation because it makes more sense tax-wise, you can say, okay, IRS, tax me as an S Corp instead. And that just means it takes away that double tax for the corporation. So if you are doing a service-based business, but you're small and you don't plan on, going public or anything like that, you could do an S Corp. And if you are, selling a product like, hair care or, a journal or, any sort of product that you're selling, of course, that's a product too. You would most likely fall into the LLC bracket, or box. So you can sort of use that as your guide. But again, it's not necessarily foolproof. And then depending on the state where you're in, there may be a reason to do something different.
So I was showing your website because I want to show that you had this whole team of people.
Oh,
Every time people think of attorneys, they think of like Scandal or something ridiculous, Olivia Pope, people in these boardroom meetings, something crazy. And I see you guys questions. I see it. We got some Bronx in here. I'm going to read them off. We got Brooklyn, New York. Listen, we went to the Bronx. I was like, I forgot something in the car. I'm going to walk back. They're like, no, stay here.
Not by yourself.
That's what they said, not by yourself. And I had my cowboy boots on. They were scaring the mess out of me. I was like, oh, Lord, never mind. I'm just going to drink off one of y'all.
Just leave it. Save yourself.
We got West Palm Beach. We got Chicago, DC, Palm Beach, Florida, Virginia, Ohio. We got Detroit, Boston. Nina Love, sorry, I'm misspelling your name. I was shocked UPS trademarked the color brown. I was like, how is it possible to trademark color?
Yeah, so really, and then you have to think of trademarks when they like, say for instance, UPS, they protected the color brown. So any other company that's doing what they're doing cannot use the color brown as their sort of theme, right? And the reason why they were able to do that is because they acquired sort of distinctiveness, like because they've been using this and it's so synonymous with what they do and how people know them, they were able to protect it. So if you just started and you like, I want blue's my color, they're going to be like, how and why, should we give that to you? Or should we say that people in your sector of the, business can't use this color because you're using it? So you kind of have to build up that reputation in order to do that.
I love how they're like, what can brown do for you? I was like, I didn't get the commercial, but now that's, I'm like, oh, that does make sense.
Yeah.
They just don't put it in there. Down to Earth said, if you create a podcast, should you trademark the name?
That's a great question. And absolutely yes, right? Absolutely yes, you should trademark the name of your podcast because that's going to be one of the main ways that they sort of find you, right? And that is you're building equity in that name, meaning that name is becoming more and more valuable with your followers and your viewers and your downloads, etc. It's becoming more and more popular. So you should definitely protect that because it's an asset of your business.
Listen, I'm about to trademark some stuff because I used to be number 2 Ericka on YouTube. And then that daggone Busset challenge came out. And now I'm number 3 Ericka on YouTube. The girl who hit the Busset challenge is Ericka Banks. So people be typing in Ericka and I'll be like, that ain't even right.
Terrible.
I think I've heard already. What's up, Boston, Atlanta, Houston, Washington, Northwest Washington, D.C.? Is that a particular space? Okay, excuse me. Speak on equity versus non-equity ownership in LLCs, please, is what they say.
Okay. So an equity owner is someone who owns part of the actual value of the business. A non-equity owner could be like it just sort of depends on how it's structured, but a non-equity owner could be like someone who's a silent partner, and they're getting a certain fee or a certain fixed amount back from their investment. Or it could be somebody who doesn't actually own the business, but they have an interest in what the business is doing. So there's some sort of agreement that they're expecting to receive something back in return. So it's kind of a broad question, but that's the gist of it.
I like that. That right there is a whole show in itself. Equity versus non-equity. We have some family members, and my little nephews are like 10% in one of our trucking business stuff. So it's like, yeah, they non-equity. Cool. Highland, California, Kansas City, Missouri. What anyway, this person said operating agreements. Most people don't do these. Should they though?
Period.
I'm like, should they though? Because I'm a big believer in Texas. They're big on it.
Yes, you should do an operating agreement. In fact, it's really important that you do one because it is showing, if you ever come into any legal issues, it's showing that you're actually running the business in the way that it should be. And the operating agreement is basically going to discuss what is the company doing and how does it make its decisions, and you know, what's the determining factor for those things. So really, without an operating agreement, it could be like you're running it haphazardly, or it's no distinction between you and the business. You know, it's kind of just a front, if you will, right? Although you're not looking at it like that, but that's how they can view it.
Well, I will tell you, here in Texas and everybody's favorite bank, Navy Federal Credit Union, they're not letting you come in there without no operating agreement. They're just not. They don't have time for it. Also, too, I think, remember when Trump's attorney, what was his name? Silly man, that had that he had that paper thin LLC, and immediately they're running like $1 million through the bank account like in a month, and you're like, sir.
Yeah, what happened here?
No operating agreement, no nothing, sir. Like,
that's a good point you bring up, Ericka, that banks and other institutions that you're doing transaction with, they're not going to let you do it without an operating agreement. Especially if you want to buy real estate, they're going to be like, where's your operating agreement? You know, or your bylaws if you have a corporation. Where are your, you know, how do we know like who owns what? You know, was the authority for this particular person to act on behalf of the company? So all that stuff can come from your operating agreement.
Justine said, is it best to start my blog as an LLC?
So a blog would most likely, not knowing anything else or where you're from, a blog I would say would probably fall into that LLC bucket.
What's up, Boston, Raleigh, Chicago, Dallas, Texas, Chicago? We were just talking about it's freezing up there, Mr. Willie. Washington, D.C. They're like, aren't hashtags being trademarked?
Yeah, so hashtags are being trademarked. And, you know, since hashtags have started to come around, when they really started to be connected to brands. However, there's like a debate as to whether or not you should do it, because with the hashtag, you kind of want people to hashtag, right? That's the way that they find you. And so if you're trademarking it, you're kind of like protecting it. And when you're protecting it, you're supposed to police against it. Like, no, don't use my trademark. That's not you. But it's like a catch-22 because you want people to hashtag. So it's, you know, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. But if there's a phrase that is connected to your brand, it may be better to just protect that phrase rather than protect it as a hashtag itself.
Now, you know, someone who I was proud of in all this, because there's so many, I'm just going to say so many minorities claiming, oh, that was mine first, and they took it, nobody trademarked it. Oh boy, that was like, where the money reside? Where the money reside?
Yes.
I was like, you hear that on Instagram. Don't you do it. Don't you take it.
I was too, man. That was great.
Like, get my coins. If you want to use this, you're gonna pay me. O'Neill Harris said you can use another shade of brown and patent it. Man, they probably got all kind of browns.
No, and especially when it's so with trademarks, it's not only that you can't trademark the same exact thing, but you can't trademark something similar either, right? So if somebody is in that sector, like, you know, shipping or whatever it is, and they want to do something, they want to do like a light brown, whatever the case is, they're going to be like, no, because that's going to confuse the public as to whether or not you're UPS, you know?
That makes sense. Jabrass said, what do you, if I can talk, let me see. What if you do business internationally? Do you need to trademark in the US and Nigeria or any other country?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, you do. If you're located in the US and your business is, you know, has started in the US, you want to get a US trademark first, and then you can get a trademark in one of those other countries. There's like certain, I would say like databases or affiliations between countries. So depending on where you are, there are different ways that we will go about trademarking that internationally.
I don't know if you can see the questions on your side, but if not,
yeah, I can. When you put them up, I can see them.
Okay. I know someone who wants to trademark a slogan. Don't they have to trademark a business first?
So no, first of all, now love, I love your picture.
She got this to the side. You're gonna see it.
So no, you don't have to trademark a business first. I mean, perhaps you should, it depends, but you don't have to. You can just trademark your slogan if that's the thing that people know you for and you're going to be using it, you can do that without having to do the business. And it's not the business so much, it's the business name or the actual name that people are resonating with. So it could be two different. Like your LLC could be one name, but the way people know you is, Classy Climb or whatever. You don't have to.
I'm gonna trademark some stuff. Justine says she's from NY, the one that asked about the blog LLC questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're from New York. I would most likely say that you should be in an LLC for your blog.
Okay. 911 says, is it possible for an individual to create a nonprofit 501c, or is it mandatory to have a board?
So a nonprofit 501c, is it possible? You do need to have a board. It's required that you have those 3 individuals at minimum to start your nonprofit, and they should have some involvement, not just named, but they should have some involvement.
Okay. Justine also asked, should all businesses have like disclaimers and disclosures?
Yes, you should. I mean, it's going to depend on what you're doing, whether and with what you have to say. But if you're treading on any sort of like specific license that you might need to have to do what you're doing, you want to disclaim that you don't have that, so you're not pretending to be, or you say that you do have that, whatever the case is. Like for me, I need to tell people that this is not legal advice, this is for your information only because of my license. So it depends on the business, but most likely there's going to be some sort of disclaimer or disclosure that you need to share.
For sure. She said 3 for nonprofits and meeting notes. She said, who honors U.S. trademarks other than Americans? China copies anything and everything.
Oh, yeah, you're right. China does not recognize
They be like, who?
They do not recognize that as a function of their law. I was talking to my sister about this. She actually is living in China right now. And she's like, they don't care. They do not respect your stuff. So
teaching abroad, or she just said, I'm out?
She's teaching abroad. Yeah, how'd you know?
Girl, listen, I was like dead set on going to Korea for 2 years, right? Because my family's like, you need to go to Air Force, you need to go somewhere. I'm like, I'm going to Korea. And like I could not get into a school. I was so mad. But it's worth it. It's a good.
She's enjoying it. Yeah, she's enjoying
it. Shy, the Empress Tarot. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Tarot cards. I think I'm saying it wrong. Okay. She did great discussion. Bylaws. Okay. Panthergod, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what your answer to your question is. Use Sabine Franco if you in New York. He's like, best use LegalZoom. I don't even use LegalZoom. I mean, I'm at this point now where I use attorneys because before I messed up. So I'm just, protect yourself.
I was gonna say, like, LegalZoom will just do what you tell them. If you like, I need, a whatever. If you say I need an LLC, but you really shouldn't be, or I need a corporation or whatever, but you really shouldn't, they're gonna be like, okay, and they'll just do it for you. So they don't really, inquire as to why, what type of business you're doing, what do you, why you feel like you need that, whether it's good for you or not good for you or whatever the case is. And doing it on your own, if you don't do any research and know zero, then you're most likely to do it wrong. So I would say use either an attorney or a company that does more than just do what you say.
Right.
What is the best service? Should I use LegalZoom?
Okay, this one said, what's the difference between trademark and copyright?
Okay. So the trademark, like I said, signifies your brand, right? And the source of your goods or your service. A copyright is where you're protecting the contents of a thing. So you're protecting the contents of either your book or manuscript or play, or you're protecting choreography, or you're protecting a movie, or music, or the contents of like lyrics, written lyrics and things like that. So copyright is where you're protecting the content of something, or even like art and design. You could use a copyright to protect that. So if it's not showing the source of your goods or services, which it would not fall under trademark, then you would be looking into copyright to see if that's something that you could use to protect it. And so With copyright, though, do know that you cannot protect slogans, words, titles, things like that. It has to be more than that. Yeah. So it has to be a bit creative, not like, just like a stick figure man. You know what I mean? Like it has to be like some level of creativity involved.
I imagine a stick figure man. She's like, what?
Yeah.
Piercing the corporate veil. Can you touch on this, please?
Yes. So when I said how if you are not running your company with some measures in place, like for instance, keeping track of your records, having a business account and keeping the expenses separate from your personal, just making sure that when you're transacting with people that they know the difference between you and the company, you're signing on behalf of the company, not just your name, little things like that. You are now protecting and strengthening your liability protection. What happens is when you don't do that, if you do run into any issues, piercing the corporate veil allows the courts or whatever, claim liability that comes about, it'll allow the courts to go through the company to get to you. Right. So that's the corporate veil. So the corporate veil is your protection. And if you're not running running the business properly, then essentially they could go through it to get to you. So that's why it's important to keep those things. Don't just like me and the company is the same and you don't know who you're dealing with or whatever. Yeah. So you want to make sure that that is separate. Another thing that helps prevent piercing the corporate veil is to having more than one owner. Typically, they don't like to do that if there's more than one owner of a business. So that's just a little tip.
Something I thought of. I thought of you when the PPP started coming out because so many people were like, "Oh, I gotta get an LLC." Did you get people literally were like, "You ever seen World Police where the hands are like this?"
Yeah,
the mannequins. That's what I think of when. So, did you get an increase of business during that time or no?
Yeah, I did. But the thing with the PPP, they were like on that part of it. They were like, you had to have been in business by February of last year. So if you ain't going to pop up your LLC now and get it. So they were kind of stopping people. But people who had LLCs that, or corporations, whatever, that weren't really doing anything with them was like, oh, I got one. Let's,
where the money reside. Opulence said he loves the New York accent. The data is fire as well.
Thank you.
Can't you do trademark searches yourself and save money, or is there an app you got to do trademark searches for in all 50 states?
Yeah. So, okay, you can do it yourself, but is it going to be good enough? I don't know. At the trademark office, they do have a lot of resources. They have a lot of information, but there is a lot of ways to mess up, right? And when it comes to searching, their search sort of software, it doesn't allow you to do a really thorough search because again, it's not only what exactly is the same, it's also what's similar. So we use an advanced search tool to do that, to make sure we're getting all types of things that come back to let us know if it's not only the same but similar, so that we can make a proper analysis. So that's the difference. I mean, people do it, I'm not saying that you can't, but it's just whether or not it's going to be successful or not.
I just put it to you like this. I think of my boss who was making, she had, okay, and everybody, y'all can never probably guess who it is, but she had rubberized oil pans. Because in the military, guys would be moving trucks and running over oil pans, and oil would be everywhere. It'd just be a mess all day. With these rubberized oil pans, they could run over it, and then the oil would spill out. The patent. And like so many lawyers were telling her, you need to do this or this or that. And she wouldn't listen because she was trying to be cheap.
Oh, wow.
Just keeping it a buck. She was trying to be, and when that 12-year ran out in the middle of the Iraq war, everybody could make the rubberized oil pans.
Wow.
Not just her. And so that's why I tell people, I'm like, now looking back at so many things where I had a film festival in North Carolina and we got it, we were trying to get things trademarked and all this other stuff. I'm telling y'all, it's just worth your time and headache. If you're really going to spend the next 5-10 years promoting your brand, what's the money on the front? It just
it's true. I mean, and you could even look at brands that were fairly new, right? Like something like Uber. I mean, that's a tech company, but they're fairly new in our existence. Imagine they didn't trademark. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what your company is going to be unless you know you're just not that serious about it. But you don't know when you're seriously, starting a venture. It could be, your brand could be worth millions of dollars, just the brand itself, the trademark itself. So to the point where you could just not even have to run the business and license the name, and now you're just making money off of that. So it's valuable.
Because I think of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. They license out they be having events. He ain't even there. I'd be like, that's crazy. Opulence says, look, you can live on USPTO website for weeks. I wouldn't leave it to chance. I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, so Blu Grass said, now I have an answer to this, but I'm gonna let you. My first answer is, if you really have your LLC operating like a true business, and you're getting paid 30%, which is just a very common accounting number, 30% checks for your company, a judge is gonna figure out, like, why you're not getting paid 30%? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, you could technically keep the funds in the LLC and not get paid to you, and therefore you don't have to pay child support because you're not getting income. But if the judge is doing their due diligence, like, okay, what do you do for a living, asking you for returns and things like that, they're going to be hip to it. And then how are you getting your needs met? Like, how are you getting your needs met? So it's almost like,
how are you living? How are you eating? How are you getting gas?
Yeah, and they're gonna be like, okay, we're just gonna put a number. We're just gonna give you.
I've seen that happen to people, and I think y'all stop playing. Stop playing
all the time. Yep.
Jabrass said, when would you say a holding company is useful? I was thinking of doing one for trucking due to potential liability from accidents.
Okay. Well, a holding company gives you an additional separation from your personal, from you to the company. So it gives you that, another layer of anonymity, perhaps. It's also good for sort of like just structure wise if you have like a bunch of different businesses, it helps you sort of streamline. You have one entity to basically run all your income through. It also is good for holding assets. So assets that are not, let's say, for instance, stocks or intellectual property, like your trademarks and things like that. If that holding company is doing no business, that is another useful way of having a holding company or a parent company.
And Diaspora said, how would you copyright a blog?
You could do it one of two ways. You could either copyright each blog post, which you're submitting it, either you're having your attorney do it or you're submitting it to the copyright office, copyright.gov. It is comprehensive enough if you have the time to do your homework, to do it yourself. Or you could copyright it as a collective. So as a whole group of all the blogs, that you've posted, you can do it as a whole group and then submit that.
She said, can you explain the lifestyle discrimination statute? I was researching for my blog and I came across this statute. Girl, what statute did you come across?
I know. I'm not familiar, off the top of my head. So.
I know y'all, she done had a long day. We just throwing some questions at her. Hold on now. She's a wheeze. She said, do business owners own their domain name when you use a self-hosting site?
When you use a self-hosting
site. I'm sorry. My contacts was getting dry like
Do businesses own their domain name? So if you purchase your domain, self-hosting site, I would assume that you do, right? You have to pay a fee. This would be if you're purchasing it and it's yours and it's not like a .wix.com, you know what I mean? Like where it has the host name behind it. If it has the host name behind it, then you don't own it. But if it's just you, at justina.com, then you usually would own it. Do you have to pay a fee for a domain name to the state? No, you don't pay it to the state.
Okay. Solid Steps to Wealth said, my favorite two sisters, dropping next level gems per usual. Miss Ward in the building, high-end appliance repair. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
What are some of the craziest things you've come across as being an attorney working with wills and trust, I've told you there's kind of like, I get crazy stories, but what's something you can share or can't share, or, you know, give us a snippet?
I mean, in terms of, I could say in terms of people not protecting properly, you know, in terms of people not protecting property, I've had one that I kind of always talk about. This young lady came to me. She inherited some property when she was a teenager, but it, you know, wasn't given to her. It was in her grandmother's name and in her name. When she got 18, she was going away to college, and then her uncle decided to essentially, I guess, manipulate her into signing it over to him. She didn't really know the magnitude of what she was doing. And then so she basically just signed over her whole inheritance. And because she didn't know, because it wasn't left to her properly, it should have been left to like a trustee or something to manage it for her, so that she couldn't just herself sign it over, not knowing, you know, what was going on. That's one of the most annoying stories, and it really bothers me. Another story that I have is a young man who his mom had passed away. He was probably like 22 or something. His mom had passed away, and essentially he's like, you know, she intended to leave me this property, but she left it in my uncle's name. And so I don't know what is it with the uncles, but either way, yeah. Either way, now it's in that person's name. It does not belong to you, and there is no inheritance for you if that be the case. So a lot of people think that it's a misconception that I see a lot, that you could just leave a deed in anybody's name, even though your intention is to have someone else get it. And it's like, no, if you are deeding a property, you are giving that property away. Don't do that if you don't intend for that person to have it forever, you know, because it's really,
like we have so our family has a lot of farmland in North Carolina, and like my youngest aunt, so I have aunts that is oldest 76 and youngest 50. My grandma was married multiple times and had a great life, and so my youngest grandma had her last baby at 42, 43, so she was living her life. Okay, her husband was like 6 years younger than her. So when he died, he left my aunt this land, and it said his name, his sister's name, and my aunt's name. Well, my aunt didn't think he ever kept paying property taxes for like 7 years. And then all of a sudden, the children of the aunt were like, hey, that's our family. That's our land. And she had to go and show the court, no, every year I've paid this. I've lived here. I've built a home on this land. You know, my father didn't mean for that. So when I hear your stories, I know they're true, because I've literally seen people experience this really horrible thing where some family members like, well, it was unclear. Nothing was unclear about it. He told you what to do. Stop playing games.
Yeah. And another pitfall is where you have like either a second marriage or you have children from a previous relationship. If you don't plan, then and you're married, all your stuff could go to your spouse. And then your children get disinherited. You know what I mean?
In Texas, they done got so tired of y'all and all these marriages, they just cut it in half. They go 50% to the children, 50% to you. We sick of y'all. I will say it's a terrible meme, but it makes me think of, don't end up dying and being someone's special friend on the obituary and get nothing. There's so many times when people don't marry in their older years, and then they get to death, and now this person that's been living with them for 20 plus years has no house, has no car, has no bank account. Like it's really crazy. I will even say my friend mom, you know, their dad had been suffering with lung cancer for over a year and a half. She'd always use debit cards and all this different stuff and didn't think anything of it. Well, when he died, all of a sudden they locked everything. So his military retirement was going in there. All this stuff was going in there, and she had notified him that he had died, and so they automatically were like, and locked. And then she had to bring all this paperwork. She didn't have no will. She didn't have any of that. And I thought that was so crazy, because he had been going through cancer for probably like 2 years, but they had nothing. She just assumed, I'm a wife, I will continue to have access to these accounts.
Yeah, that is the assumption and it's, I mean, I get it. Why not? Right. But yeah, no, once that person passes away, it's like, they will not let you do anything unless you get a court order, you know, basically. And that's what you're basically going to court for, is to get permission to do something. And so do not assume that because you're married that you are going to have access to things, because even though it could be yours rightfully, you're going to have to go through a whole court process to actually get it. You know what I mean? And don't assume that, you'll be able to make healthcare decisions if somebody's in the hospital, or you'll be able to access their bank accounts and things like that. She was lucky because she already had access, but say she didn't have access and he couldn't make decisions or couldn't, give her that, she wouldn't have been able to even do that much.
Yeah. Nicole Marie said, my father remarried. They didn't have any children. He died. She says he has no will, and she got the whole of his estate. The legal system isn't right.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Don't leave your kids any money. Leave them a trust.
That is so a trust. It depends on what you, how much you have. Typically, if you have more than 100,000, if you have real estate, then a trust is going to usually be the way that you want to go. And that prevents your family having to ever go to court to deal with, getting access. They can get instant access, and you can decide how you want to receive the funds, when you want them to receive it. If you want it to last, if you want it to be protected forever, a trust is a really good tool, and it's becoming more and more, popular. But
I love when people talk about trust, and I'll be like, "What you got? Nothing. What are you talking about?
Right?
You got $100,000 sitting around? Talk to me, right?" Our father died in my senior year of college, and he left us annuities. And to this day, that's why I always make fun of the JG Whitworth, because like they were messaging us, like sending us marketing. And I said, man, imagine if you were a person who is not a long-term thinker. Right. You would go, oh yeah, give me my money now. Yeah. And JG Whitworth getting paid out forever in the future, and you done spent your little money. You know what I mean? So this happens. This is not uncommon.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you said your grandfather, right?
My father. My grandfather's still kicking it in Chicago right now.
Okay, what's up?
With his Cadillac and everything.
Yeah, so your father probably made sure his beneficiaries were up to date, That's another pitfall that we see, is that people don't update their beneficiaries, and therefore somebody who they didn't intend, or no longer intended, gets their assets. Like, say you did get a divorce and you never changed it, your ex-wife was on there, or things like that.
Happened in Texas. Yeah. Policy had $1 million. He got divorced, remarried, or he remarried. I think he remarried for like 4 years, not like a long term. Right. But he had been at the company for like 20 plus years. Dropped dead of a heart attack in Houston, and you know who showed up to get that money? That ex-wife. Hey, she said 1.2 mil to me.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
She has a young child. She's like, not my problem.
Oh man,
not my problem.
They just write the check right to her, and that's it.
Well, they had one lady who, it was 5 years ago they were divorced, and then in Houston they had one lady, they had been divorced 15 years, and he had never updated anything. And I'm like, y'all, come on, man.
Yeah. You should be looking at these things, especially even if you don't have planning, but you have like stuff that has beneficiary designations on it. You want to look at it every 1 to 3 years to say, is this the same? Do I still feel this way? Because you're giving an outright gift.
Yeah. I've told my mom, I'm like, if something happened to me, I want you to take all these YouTube videos down, okay? Take that money and run. Like, liquidate everything. You don't need these houses. You don't need none of this mess. Liquidate it all. And my mom's like, girl, don't say that. I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. Man, sad stories, the real PPP, put the people on paper.
Yes, I like that.
Better trademark that. And so, there's so many ridiculous stories I can think of, but
right.
So when it comes to wills, right? Because I'm thinking of power of attorney. My mom's military, so she had been going overseas. What's the difference in like a will or a power of attorney? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. So a will is a good document, and it's useful if you don't need any additional planning, right? Just know that it's a place to start, and it's a good place to start. A will allow you to leave your assets to your loved ones or whoever you choose. So remember, if you don't leave a will, the state says who gets it, right? And it could be somebody you don't want. It could be your sister. If you're not friends with her, you don't care for her, whatever. Or, it could go to your parents or cousins and things of that nature, depending on who's alive. But if you have a will, you get to choose. You get to say, I want this person to receive. I want that person to receive. Maybe you don't want your spouse to get everything. you know, you want to provide for other people. So you can do that in your will. The only thing with the other thing is you can add guardianship. So if you have young children, you could say, I want so-and-so to be the guardian of my child. Very, very important. If you have young children, you must do this. Sorry to tell you.
Let me tell you, like to this day, when my mom would go overseas downrange, and people would be, I had family members who were shocked because it said, under no circumstances do my daughters or son go to this person, they go over here. And they were feeling some type of way. Yeah. My mom was not playing. And so my mom, you know, she's more of a over planner. She left us like $5 million. And then she made rules about how it was going to be spent, this. And there was a young lady we knew, when she got in a car accident in South Carolina, she got hit by a drunk driver. I mean, there was nothing. Like, it was just random people caring for her children. They ran through the money. They're buying cars. I mean, it was like, you don't think people will do that because you love them. Right. You don't know. You need to have a plan.
You need to have a plan. And then, you know, they're also experiencing loss. So you don't know how that's going to, you know, sort of affect them. The only thing that you should know with the will is that some people think that if you have a will, you don't go to court, but you still do go to court if you have a will. It's just that the will does say, it's just that the will does say exactly how you want your assets to go, so the courts will follow that. But that's why a trust is more attractive if it fits your, you know, your sort of needs, because you avoid going to court.
So trust, you avoid going to court. But with the will, they still got to take you up there.
They still got to take you up there. It's just that they now, it's just that they now have directions on what to do.
Girl, listen, that's the whole new thing. I'm like, interesting. Well, because I don't know, you watch so much TV, you be thinking, you know, every time I hear that some music artist died and they ain't got no will, I'm like, y'all is lying. As particular as Aretha Franklin was about describing them people's dresses, there was a will somewhere. Taylor Swift, nice blouses. Trust me, she had a will. Okay. Prince, trust me, Prince won't run around there throwing them legs in the air with no will. Y'all need to stop lying. Stop lying.
I agree with you. I mean, the other thing with that is if you're not like responsible and intentional about telling people where your stuff is, you know, and giving it to the right people, then it could be that somebody found it and destroyed it because they ain't like what it said. You know what I'm saying? Like,
listen,
got to it first.
Okay. Listen, Prince, his siblings read that and was like, not today.
Yeah, exactly.
Shoot.
Jabrass, you are right.
Is this true? A will is public.
Yeah, so a will, when you create it, it's not public, but you know, because you have to go to court, it gets filed in the court, and now anybody could go up to the court. Well, I know this is the case in New York, in Jersey, but I'm not sure of every single state. But anybody could go up to the court, and it's public information, so they could know all what you have or what you left.
That makes sense.
This creates a vulnerability for your heirs, you know, particularly if they're young and things like that. Like, people could just be like, well, I know what you got, so now I'm going to befriend you, or whatever the case is, to get some of what you have.
I would say when I got left some property, I was like, why is they blowing up our mailbox like this? I was only 19, and you live, you learn, right? Gosh, that's so interesting. Now, there's a question I had. This guy made a video, and he's a CPA or whatever, and he was saying, when you die, do not put zero money to your children because they can contest the will. You should leave them $1. Now, I thought that was petty, but what's your thoughts on it?
I agree. What I usually put is that I did not. So if there's an heir, like a child or somebody who would naturally be the first one to get, I typically would include that I did not intentionally disinherit this person. I intended to leave them, you know, whatever it is. Right. So that way it's clear that you didn't forget. You know, and if there was some mistake that happened, I didn't forget you. I'm just not leaving you.
Well, that thing of clear sound in body and mind. Okay, like Kurt Franklin, my son that I called him beep, he gets nothing.
He ain't gonna get nothing.
Toya Nun said, "Can you really put a will on a piece of paper, sign it, date it, and it's acceptable without an attorney? No property, just money and materials."
So It depends on your state, what they recognize, but as usually, if it fits I should say the state's requirements for a valid will. So like, for instance, in New York, you need 2 witnesses, in order to have a will be valid. So you need to have signed it. The witnesses need to see that you signed it, and then they sign it in your presence and things like that. So if you follow all of those things, technically, yes, you can write out your will. There are some additional language that we would use to avoid like trouble in the court. Like, for instance, one major one is including that no bond needs to be posted for your executor or whoever's going to be running it. Because if they have to post a bond, then they have to have the money. And if they don't have and also to get a bond, you have to be credit worthy. So those are like additional stipulations that they may not have, but you may still want them to be your executor. So you have to be clear on those things.
Anthony Bolton said, my oldest brother is still pissed off at me because we got a will for our mom before she passed away. He wanted to keep all her property for himself. Yeah, people be out here doing the most.
They do.
Let me see. I ain't gonna keep on here too much longer. We're about to get to the hour mark, y'all. In New York, y'all a little bit, you're late. People contest wills all the time. Remember Anna Nicole Smith fighting against her late son's husband? And that little girl in the end got all that money.
Yeah.
That's sad, but she did.
She did, yeah.
And she said, and they all died. Yes, that is the part of the story I was saying.
Every single one of them?
The son died after they were fighting in court. Son had a heart attack before he was getting ready to win. Had a heart attack, died. His family was like, we ain't gonna keep fighting this fight. So then she dies, and then she has that dark-haired attorney that they accused of killing her. Then he in the court, and it's like, pretty much everybody that was involved in that triangle died.
No, I didn't realize that.
and then like the attorney tried to be the dad over the child, but the father eventually got her.
Yeah.
Listen, that's what I said. I don't believe it, Jabrass. You gonna tell me Prince fought for years over his masters and didn't have a will? Boy, bye.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy.
I don't believe
now we have DMX with the same situation.
And here's the thing. I think our community, and just your minorities in general, think Black don't crack, Asian don't raisin, Hispanic live forever. We gonna be 90 years old, Tito's in the house. No, that's not always the case.
It's not going to be the case, and I don't know what it is. I think either it's not wanting to face making these decisions, or the reality of what we're all gonna die one day. Like, it's not bringing on anything. It's just facts. It's either that, or like you said, like they're just thinking that they're gonna live forever, or they don't want to spend the money to do it. And
it's not even that expensive though.
It's not that expensive.
The prices? Even though we're talking about New York prices, give us some prices.
So I would say on the very low end, right, for something decent, you're talking about maybe $1,500, but that's probably just a will and maybe some power of attorney healthcare proxy. But it could go up depending on like what assets that you have. Like on average, I'm seeing like around $3,000 to $5,000 on average. But again, if you have a lot of assets and you want to protect all of them, then it could be a little bit more.
For sure. But yeah, you'll never convince me. Any of these stars, you'll never convince me they ain't got some will.
Yeah.
How long should you leave probate open? Interesting.
Probate needs to be open for about 9 months. That's, if all is well and there are no issues, no fights, it has to give the creditors an opportunity to bring a claim if the person owes something. So that's typically, but each state has a different number of how much time it needs to be open.
Oh, excuse me, they corrected me. They said the son died when she was in the hospital. So they both went out, but they both was out the door. That's all that is. They both was gone. I can't. Y'all stop.
11 children. That's 100. Could you imagine how much of a mess that is? And then when you're dealing with complex assets, like when it comes to like the value of his music, all that stuff has to be assessed you know, like all the things that, because it's not a fixed amount, you know what I mean? It's like, what does the market kind of want for that type of thing? So it's just, it becomes so messy.
Well, and then what was breaking my heart about it was that one of the guys that was close to the family was on Instagram and on Facebook telling the children to come up to the hospital. And I'm like, messy. Like, you should have your life in better order than that. Then my friend is on the internet talking, y'all call up here now. Come on up here. Like,
wow.
That's just a mess. Like, I don't understand.
Very, very messy.
Gerald Ruin said, Ericka, would you ask her which legal entity should I get for a startup concert promotion business? I am in Texas.
I'm not going to give you the answer to that because it seems very involved. So
that's complicated.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated.
You might have to send her. Some coins on that one, because it sounds layered.
Yeah, it's layered. Exactly, that's a good word.
Well, in a best or worst case scenario, if somebody has 5 kids, right?
Yeah.
And they ain't left nothing. Does it go in birth order?
No, it will go to the kids. I will say typically in most states, it's going to go to the kids equally. So it's usually some sort of split between the spouse and the children, you know, depending on the state. But whatever is going to the children is going to go equally to them.
Okay.
The state won't make any preference. But, you know, you may have a child that's actually wealthy or doing pretty well for themselves. Depending on how much assets you have, you may want to leave more to another child who's not, or who's younger. Or
listen, my grandma did that and they ain't didn't ever made a headache. All right. I have 6 aunts, and my mom and some of the older aunts do very well for themselves. No problem. We had some younger aunts. My grandma was like, leave them extra land, and like for a while they're like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
And she was trying to be helpful. And it's like, well, now the older ones have to instruct the younger ones. Okay, y'all need to do this or that. Sometimes it can be. I get it though. I get it. But as a middle child, I'd be like, give me my portion, okay? Hello, ladies. How should I set up a makeup artistry / press-on nail business? I'm so confused. Me too.
I'll go back to my example of what if you're selling a product versus a service-based business. So a product-based business is more likely to be an LLC versus a service-based business is more likely to be a corporation or S Corp. You could also have an LLC tax as an S Corp. So it depends on your situation.
Listen, Opulence said, shaking my head, yep, I've been telling people the used car can literally quench the family funeral fight. I have seen this. And assume the favorite who didn't contribute anything. You know, and that's the thing. I think as a parent, you don't want any child, even an adult child, to be handicapped in this world. So your instinct is to overcompensate for that particular child, which is, to me, and so what's funny is when you're talking about people hiding wills and where's their paperwork, our whole family was like, oh my God, my grandma died. And it was very quick. It was like, we didn't realize, well, hey, what happened? She had a heart attack. Boom. And so they're all running around getting paperwork. Everybody's got their own insurance policy on my grandma. So they were like, we all got it, we're covered. And then we opened up a drawer and grandma got a bunch of policies on her own daggone self. And you're like, and she had instructions. I would like a pink casket. I would like a pink dress that day. And you're like, good gracious. So you got to have conversations, because even at 80, we didn't have that conversation,
Got you. Yeah.
But double,
very important.
Super covered though. Goddess Noel, thank you for the $10 super chat. She said $3,000 to $5,000 for a wheel. You mean I can't get Susie Orman kit for a few $100s and be straight? And she's got the laughing face. She's mocking it. Susie Orman, I don't trust nothing she say.
I mean, listen, it's a DIY, right? And you ain't gonna know if it's right until your family inherits whatever you left. So if you want to take that chance, I can't stop you.
Is there a certain amount dollars I should make before changing my LLC to an S Corp?
No, it's really based on whether or not it's going to help you save on taxes or not. And you really, what you're doing when you have an LLC, if you want an S Corp and it's only because of, to lower your taxable income, you're just asking the IRS to tax you differently. And so it's not really like you got to make a certain amount of money before you're doing that. I would say if you're getting consistent income and you could pay yourself a salary, which is you have to have payroll on an S Corp. I mean, you should be having payroll. So if you can consistently pay yourself a certain amount, then most likely you could be an S Corp if that makes sense for you.
Somebody said that label rip Pence Will up. I wouldn't be surprised. They was at his house like that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so, and this is kind of like the last one, and we're gonna kind of wrap it up.
Okay.
You know, because I want you to be able to enjoy your afternoon with your little mini me. As far as a trust, what are the differences between irrevocable and revocable?
Okay, so revocable trust, you are allowed to make changes to that throughout your lifetime. So you can add to it, remove from it. It's similar to how like a business, you are free to sort of, you know, run it how you please. So with the revocable trust, you can make those changes. The assets are still owned by you. So they're still taxed under your own income tax and things of that nature. And you're free to receive the income and do whatever you please. With an irrevocable trust, you can't do a lot of those things. So you are essentially saying that I'm going to lock these assets up in the trust. I'm not going to take them out. I'm not going to, you know, change them. Certain types of irrevocable trust, you can swap out assets, but you can't really, you know, take out assets fully. And it is considered outside of your estate if it's done properly. So what that means is almost like you no longer own it. It's for the benefit of your beneficiaries. Okay. And sometimes people will do that for a number of reasons. One, it could be to protect your assets from Medicaid, Medicare. If you become a certain age and you need to get like assisted living and things like that. It could also be to certain assets might be getting taxed too much and you want to sort of separate them out. And it will stop the appreciation from being taxed under your whatever tax bracket you're under.
Yeah, listen, there's a million questions I could ask you on another day, but I love that you came on because I was reading an article in Forbes about these women that are billionaires. And people are like, they ain't real billionaires. And I had to read, like, why is everybody so beefing with them? And it was because as their father was getting older, and, you know, he was one of them people, had that baby at 75, you know, the last babies, those special dust bunnies. But anyway, so he had them last babies. And so the girls are turning 18 and 19, but as he was getting older, he kept putting more and more of the company over to them. And so eventually, as he died, they became billionaires. And people were like, oh, what's going on? And that's why. Yeah. And so I was like, there's so many little tricks and techniques.
Yeah. A lot of different strategies. You know, the more you have, the more creative you need to get.
For sure. I know I missed one of the questions in here, but it seemed really in depth about housing. It's one passing away, Blu Grass. You might want to message her or see how much it costs. How can they reach you and how can they like book some time with you? Now I know you got a whole staff. You got a whole house of attorneys. Okay, you just got them all up in there. So how can they work with your office?
So you can go to you can find all our info on our website, which is franco-lawfirm.com. So the hyphen is like a dash in case anybody's confused about that. Or I'm on Instagram, Sabine the Purpose Lawyer, or Sabine_the Purpose Lawyer. And I also have a YouTube channel, Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. So you can catch me all those places.
I love it. Thank you for coming on. Listen, later this summer, I'm doing a meetup in New York. So I will message you when I'm in there. I know it'll be hot in the streets. I'm just out there doing too much. But
we're trying to get outside though. So definitely let me know.
Todd Smith said, thank you both for your time and doing this video. We really appreciate it. And then everybody's like, please, I need her contact info. Again, Sabine Franco, the Purpose Attorney.
Yeah, the Purpose Lawyer.
Purpose Lawyer.
And and you could also email my office at franco-lawfirm.com.
You guys, I'm putting it in the chat and it will also be in the description. Again, she got a whole team. And I'll also share one of your videos from your channel in the community tab. You'll get a lot of engagement there.
That.
For sure. Y'all contact her. Don't ask me. Y'all don't know. CYA. So your attorney. So your accountant. CYA at all times.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm so happy that you had me.
I'll see you soon. All right, later.